9 minutes to 6. A group of MPs, we've been talking about it on the show tonight, predicting that recreational cannabis will be fully legalised in the UK within the next 5 to 10 years. This cross-party group of 3 MPs, they've been on a fact-finding trip to Canada, which became the first G7 country to allow recreational use of cannabis. That was last year. Labour's David Lammy now backs the legislation, despite his party opposing it.
I want the market legalised, taken away from criminal gangs, young people not criminalised because of use, but I actually want to see the strength of the stuff reduced.
Currently, cannabis considered a Class B drug in this country, so anyone caught with it potentially could face up to 5 years in the nick. Greg de Hoedt is chairman of the UK Cannabis Social Clubs. He's with us on the show. Greg, hello to you. Evening.
How are you doing?
Okay. How much do you know about Canada and what they've done and how successful it's been or otherwise?
Well, obviously, it's been huge news. They've legalised it. They've given out licences to people to be able to grow now, but it's not really just giving license to people. They've given licenses to companies with lots of money to produce it on a commercial scale. And what's happened is a lot of the dispensaries that were operating in Vancouver, Toronto, and similar cities, they've been shut down. A lot of them haven't been given the opportunity to move over to the legal industry, and it's kept them in the black market, whereas these are the people that actually campaign for legalisation. So it's been a bit hit or miss, really, whether it's been as popular as people would like it to be.
So who's producing it then?
Well, a lot of the commercial companies now, they've got licenses. It's not being grown by sort of like small craft cannabis companies like we've seen in the past. Companies that own alcohol, like the big alcohol and tobacco companies, they now have bought out some companies like Canopy Growth, who are sort of like involved with the medical cannabis and recreational cannabis businesses over there in Canada.
So we're talking about conglomerates, big business, buying into the legalisation of the cannabis market, producing cannabis and selling it, so they're making the money rather than the smaller organisations and groups who were the people responsible for getting it legalised in the first place.
Yeah, that large call for legalisation, why we needed it and who it would benefit and what harms would be prevented if it was legalised, a lot of that needs to still come true. A lot of people are disappointed with the way it's turned out. I mean, it's really privileged position to be able to say, yeah, we're going to legalise it in 5 or 10 years. But what about the people suffering now? Like, I've got Crohn's disease. I've not got a prescription yet. And the doctors are still telling me that it's a placebo, even though there's plenty of evidence out there to say that it supports people like me. I mean, if I had access to cannabis as a normal person for well-being reasons, I mean, we term it recreational here in the UK and in America, but really it's just healthy people that use cannabis as well.
Well, we've heard about it being used for medicinal purposes, and there've been some cases recently about that. But and there's a lot of people that like you would want to use it. So if they're talking about 5 to 10 years, can I just go back to the Canada thing for a start? You talked about big business jumping on board now and selling this stuff. The strength of it, has that been reduced there? And anybody selling it legally has got to be better than the illegal trade and drug dealers making money out of people.
You're just assuming there that the people who grow it when it's illegal are dangerous and are nasty and are doing it for ill-gotten gains. It's normal people that are growing it. It's normal people that are being arrested, and they're providing cannabis to people now.
Is there not a portion of people who are criminals selling cannabis
in the market, and that's why we need to regulate it, because they've got the resources to do it on large scales, and they don't care about the way it's grown. We do need to regulate commercial cannabis, but we need to make sure people have got the right to grow at home, and I think we need to do that before we turn around and start saying, yeah, okay, let's give commercial licenses to people to make, to companies to make, millions of pounds. Having a cannabis license is almost a license to print money.
But Greg, the people on the streets who are selling it, the criminals, or a portion of them are criminals. They're not bothered about the strength of it. You don't know what's in it.
No,
so if you're buying it, then that's a gamble, isn't it?
On the terms of the strength, UK street cannabis, recent studies have shown it's about 14% THC. Whereas the cannabis available in Canada through licensed dispensaries is 22% THC. But there's also other types of cannabis available for them, so people have got a choice behind it. But to say that legal cannabis means the strength is going to come down, it's a little bit of a myth. We need to understand cannabis a little bit better here and what people like out of cannabis. So if we try and say that people are going to that cannabis isn't going to be high strength if it's legal, I think that's a bit of a lie to people. People are going to be able to have a choice of what kind of cannabis they want to buy, whether it's a high CBD product or a high THC product or somewhere in between.
Okay, so in this country, assuming it's 5 years to 10 years that it becomes legal, you have different strengths of cannabis that you're able to buy. Who manufactures it? It still remains to be seen, whether it's smaller organisations, whether it's big organisations. In the States, in California, you've got some pretty well-known celebrities who've started to manufacture it, haven't you, over there?
Yep, they're buying into it, but what they're doing is they're creating a brand. They're buying a white label cannabis product and then slapping their name on it. So it's large cannabis companies behind it that are making the money, that are driving this kind of sort of like brand exercise with cannabis. It is a desirable commodity. That's why so many people want it. Look at rap culture. That's promoted the cannabis use for decades, and now it's very much part of popular culture. Musicians in the UK have been using it for years. We've got songs that are written about cannabis. Ozzy Osbourne wrote a song about cannabis in England 50 years ago, and it's Sweet Leaf. It's something that's he's from Birmingham, so it's a huge part of West Midlands culture as well.
But they're talking about 5 to 10 years. Are you saying it should be sooner than that?
I think it should be this year. Like, we need to legalise now. People are suffering. People are being arrested. They're being raided in their homes. They're being put through the court system. They're growing cannabis for themselves. That's not on. We need to turn around and look at the Cannabis Social Club movement in the UK. We've got 70 clubs around the country where it's people that are growing cannabis for themselves and for their community members and sharing it at fair trade costs. We need to, create a situation where we're providing access for these people to get licenses to become legal businesses, so they're not left in the grey area or the black market when people who have got 50 to 100 million pounds come along, buy a license, and then are given free rein to the cannabis industry, when people who have been fighting for it and campaigning for it and suffering at the hands of prohibition are still left in the mud.
Just before I go to the travel, you're chairman of the UK Cannabis Social Clubs. You said there are 70 of them. So these are clubs where cannabis is grown and used for, is it recreational or medicinal purposes only?
It's grown for use. I mean, it's none of anyone else's business whether people are using it for medical reasons or for recreational reasons. The point is, it's not harming them, it's not harming anyone else, and we need to create some legal provisions for people to act in this way, when they're not doing it for criminal, reasons.
Yeah, but at the moment it's not legal, is it?
No, but that's the reason why people have created this social solution to a problem created by prohibition. People are getting that, people want to buy cannabis and they're going on the street to get it. They've been exposed to all sorts of dangers.
Yeah.
I've been mugged before when I came out of hospital. I got given 2 years left to live in 2010 for my Crohn's disease. I was given chemotherapy. They wanted to take out all my intestines, and it wasn't a very good prognosis for me at the age of 22, I must admit. I went to America. I got access to cannabis oil from people who grew it at home, and I'm still alive 9 years later. So I know that people can responsibly grow cannabis at home. They can share it and they can run cannabis businesses. Those people need to be given the right to be able to do so properly. And we need to listen to those communities before we're listening to how much money it can make these big businesses.
Interesting thoughts, Greg. I appreciate your time. Greg de Hoedt, who's chairman of the UK Cannabis Social Club.
BBC WM Travel, keeping the West Midlands moving.
That debate's going to continue, isn't it?